Did you design those skateboards in the back?
Yeah. So that one is the latest release, and then the all the way back there,
Nice.
and then that one is a company called Baker. I just like their skateboards.
Nice. Yeah,
So
dude, it seems like maybe this is a good place to start. It feels like from what I've been seeing, you've really been leaning into a lot of different creative outlets. Whether it's like the Jenga show, which is like fucking hilarious, by the way, and like I'll link to your stuff. But anybody who's listening to this, like, go check out Pat's, go check out Jenga's Instagram and just watch the Jenga show episodes. I just think that's like an amazing concept. And then like you're designing merch, you're making skateboards, and it to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, like if I don't know if it feels this way to you, but to me, it feels like everything that you're doing is very like aligned. Like it doesn't feel like any of it's like forced or like you're doing it because that's the thing you're supposed to do. I don't know how accurate that is, but that's what it feels like to me. But what's it been like working on so many different things in addition to the music?
it feels really natural. It's like it's I feel like we always put ourselves into boxes, like when I was younger, I was doing film and I really stuck to film for so long when I was like 18 until like I retired from film, which was like 3 years ago when I sold my studio. And then it's like I'm at a point now where it's like all my past is like starting to merge. So like everything that like all the tools that I've acquired, like all the practice that I put in, sometimes you think it's all for nothing, like a relationship, for instance. Like if you break up with somebody, you're like, oh, is that all for nothing, like um you did all those things that were magical that helped you find yourself,
Mm.
and ultimately that's going to be a massive tool for you somehow in the future. So for me right now, it just feels that like I finally let go of all the things in my life that were holding me back, the chains that I didn't realize were there, or even the way I saw myself. Like there was like certain columns that held up my personality that eventually dissolved, and like quite rapidly too. Like they just like over the period of like maybe a month, like totally evaporated. And with that evaporation came a lot of like letting go of past things, like um walking outside of that box as an artist and thinking, wait, why don't I shoot music videos? Why don't I just do it myself? Why don't I make skateboards? Why don't I make merch? Like these are all the things that you want to do, but you're always waiting. It's a constant waiting game. No, when I go on tour, I'll do that. Or no, when I'm a big enough artist, I'll do that. Or,
Mm.
when somebody gives me the money to do it, I'll do it. It's like you can do all of these things. You can
Right.
do whatever you want. And I think the ultimate thing, it comes down to what is your mission and your vision as an artist. What are you trying to do? If it's trying to build a huge fan base and trying to be on stages and trying to have a lot of fame, you could definitely do that. But if your goal is to build a world for like that one kid in Arkansas to just like discover you and live in your world, like of the music you created, the videos, and give him a discography to listen to while he's in school and
Mm.
give him something to look forward to, you know, obviously that's personally my my
Right.
my kind of personal mission and vision. And yeah, that's what it's come down to really in the past year, which is probably why you're seeing all that change.
Yeah, well, I think that's, I mean, I want to dive more into that because, so for the people who are listening, Pat and I have known each other for years now, which is kind of crazy. Like, and we both kind of came up in a way, like in the New York scene, playing shows, and this was like way back, like before we really, I would say, like understood our artistic identities, which was obviously something you never fully understand. It's always kind of evolving and changing, but um, since then, like Pat was saying, you started a photo studio, and then you a photo and film studio, then you sold that, and then you really dove into the music. And I would say, you've had a lot of the conventional success that like if someone who didn't know you, right, were to just go on your Instagram and look at the picture of you playing Red Rocks in front of thousands of people, or just pictures from your tour or whatever, like that first type of artist you're describing who like wants the fame and the fans and the artists, like I feel like you've had some level of that success. So yeah, I'm curious, like, and you sort of alluded to it earlier. You said like in a very quick period of a month, a lot of these identity structures that you had built started to sort of shift into something else. Was that related to this transition from wanting these more conventional things of like tons of fans and things like that? Not that they're mutually exclusive, like not that you can't continue to want that, but shifting your intention to creating that world. Like when did that shift happen in your sort of trajectory?
Well, yeah. Well, it's interesting bringing up like our like New York roots, because like Breakfast Club, like, you know, that, I mean, I feel like those shows that we were doing at Slake nightclub and at random venues that we can just get, and putting our money up and like trying to get people to come out, and sometimes a lot of people came out, sometimes nobody came out. And like, yeah, back then, what was the drive for me personally back then was definitely trying to not lose money throwing these shows. That was
Right.
probably the biggest. But back then, I don't think I was quite sure what I wanted. I just saw guys like, you know, Dylan Francis, or I saw Skrillex, and I knew that when I was standing in front of the stage and felt a certain way, I knew that I would love to be the person that made other people feel that way.
Yep.
And to me, the goal was where you want to do it to as many people as you possibly can. So you want like a whole crowd of people to make feel that way that you felt, which was for me motivational, inspiring. And I couldn't quite put my finger on why. It's not like, you know, you're Tony Robbins up there like telling people to like find the light and, you know, do this, or, you know, be more scheduled. It just felt like all my worries and fears and everything just like melted. It's like just felt more in unison with the universe. And I don't think that was just the music. I think that was also like being out there in the culture, in the place like Electric Forest, like a place that was really well curated. But the switch over happened in the course of a month because of just personal stuff. I had like you know, a very, my father passed, um, and then I ended up in the hospital, like almost died. And this all happened within 1 month. So my lung collapsed after my father passed, and which I was already grieving that, obviously. And then um, I'm in the hospital and had to go through 2 surgeries. And the second surgery was the one where they were like, yeah, you know, you might not make it. Like there, you know, there's a chance that you might die at any moment. And they told me that walking into the ER when I got a MRI, and I was sitting there just thinking, holy crap, like this is the end of the journey. Like this is it. Like I'm going to go back to where I came from. And what was all this about? Like what was the purpose of everything that I just did, you know? And then suddenly life seemed extremely short. Like it just seemed like I was looking back on being like 10 years old, like, you know, in my front yard, like picking blades of grass. And it's like, here I am. And it felt like that was yesterday. And I was like, what was all this for? Like, what was the purpose of like doing all this? Like, did I achieve the happiness that I was looking for, or the peace of mind? And the truth was no. It was a pretty startling, like, kind of awful thing to face. You
Yeah.
know, and you're thinking about, at least me personally, your family, and you're thinking about how much time did you spend with them. And I think the biggest thing I came to realize was that I'm not going to take anything with me, and the only thing that I'm going to leave is the love that I put out into the world. And I was just thinking, did I put enough out there? So it was pretty wild, because suddenly nothing meant anything to the level that I put it on. Like there was so many pedestals that I had in my life, which was like, you know, quantifying success by being on a stage, and quantifying success by the amount of streams I have, and finding external validation in other people in the way that they see me, and am I wearing cool enough clothes, or like, am I going to fit in with these people, or like, God forbid somebody doesn't like me. There's like all these things that like, you just feel like you're walking on eggshells your whole life, and then that happens and you're like, oh dang, like who cares, like it doesn't matter at all, like just go out there and make stuff, like affect that one kid like in Arkansas, like just focus on putting love out there, and it might be in your own way. It doesn't have to be like hugging that person, it could just be like getting them through their day, or like maybe you just put like one line of a lyric in your song, and maybe that changes somebody's life. You never know, really. It's kind of hard to quantify.
Yeah. Yeah, man. That's thank you for sharing that and opening up and being vulnerable like that, Pat, because I think that's such a powerful story. And like, it's just, I think that's so important because a lot of people that are going to listen to this are like artists or, spiritual people, maybe, or just people that I think uh, are just thinking about their lives in a deeper way and what really matters and what's important. And it's funny, like I don't know if you've thought about this at all, but I feel like given the timeline of when things happened in your life, like that month that happened, and then what's happened since then, it's almost like a paradox that like by focusing on just what you can give and the love you can give and stop focusing so much on those pedestals, like they almost seem to have like flowed into your life more easily, since then. Which, and I don't know if you want to speak to that at all, because I think that's something that I've certainly experienced as well in my own life, where like whenever I'm just like directly focused on what I can get from the thing, I'm like creating just from that stance towards the thing, I'm creating a distance. It's like I need to get this, which implies that I don't already have it. And then that actually keeps it further away from me. And it's like, and versus like really feeling like, regardless of what I get, like I'm just focused on what I'm giving, which is what it's out. What I'm picking up on from your story is just like changing it from an outside in to an inside out orientation. So yeah, man. I mean, I don't know if you want to like, has that occurred to you ever, of it just like when you did make that shift, how did your life sort of start to change from the external, in terms of like you switching your intention from what can I give and how much love can I give out?
That's a really interesting question. And like the truth of it is that like I've been so happy personally, like I like genuinely at peace so much more in my life that um like I've definitely noticed good things happening, but it's almost like they're just gravy. Like it's like it's just a good thing to get a call. It's like, okay, you're on this tour, or like, get put on another Red Rock show. Like, um, you know, it, uh, I've noticed definitely more people reaching out and telling me amazing things, like, how my music affects them, which is wild because at the end of the day, it's like bass music. It's not like singer songwriter stuff. It's not like I'm like saying anything in particular in like lyrics or anything. So, but that's the thing that I've noticed mostly, because I think that's what I'm really hoping to see, which is like people reaching out, saying certain things, like, hey, I've been listening to this on repeat. It's been helping me lose weight because I'm in the gym and that's what I want to do. I want to lose weight, and your EP's really helped me. Or like, um, so yeah, but there is gravy to it, which is like, I'm, it's easier to make a living doing music now. Like, people are buying the merch that I put out, which is crazy. Like, I just made that for fun. Like, I didn't think anybody was actually going to buy it.
Yeah.
Like, and then people did.
Yeah.
So So yeah, so there's definitely, I mean, according to like manifestation, I know that that's like a thing, you know, like you're supposed to sort of let go of something at a certain point and it kind of finds you, it comes back to you.
Yeah, and I think I want to caveat this because I think there's a danger even in like the way that I asked that question, where somebody could be hearing this and like almost turn that into a strategy, where it's like, oh, okay, that's how I get what I want. I just need to not care about, like, I need to make my intention about giving, and it's like that's not how it works, right? And I think I'm so happy that you described it as gravy, you know, like it's the icing on top of the cake, but it's not the cake, because the cake is something that you're baking yourself and giving out to people. It's not like something that you're getting back from the world. And yeah, man, and I know like even in my own life, it's just whenever I've focused on having fun, not only does the best music, not even best, but like I feel like whatever is infused into the music from that state, other people pick up on that and then they get that same vibe from the music. And I think that's something I've definitely noticed as well in my work. And what's fun, what's amazing about music, I think, is like once you finish a song, right, and you put it out on Spotify or whatever, it just has a life of its own. Like it's no longer, it's such a like gift because you're just like, you spend so many hours in the studio. I don't know about you, usually by the time I put out a song, I'm like so sick and tired of it and I never want to hear it again. But like then, you know, there's all these people, and to your point, it doesn't even matter the quantity, but if one person hears that and it affects them in some way, like that's like why we're doing this, you know. And to bring it back to what you were talking about earlier about like death and what the whole point of this is, I think that's such a powerful thing to keep in mind in the creative process. And I want to ask you about a Instagram post that you put out. It was actually, you put it out a while ago, but I was just like on your Instagram earlier today, and it really resonated with me. I think it was like a screenshot of a tweet that you had made where you were talking about how like every time now that you take off to go play a show, you like can't believe that this is your life, and that this started with you like trying to sound like, I think you said you were trying to sound like Skrillex or something, and now like how much you love your sound. And yeah, can you talk more about like what that journey has been like from trying to, because to me that's almost like, again, it's a bit of that like pedestalizing of like, oh, I want to sound like this person. And when I hear your music now, like yes, like you said, it is bass music, it definitely like fits into a niche, but like I can definitely tell when it's like your shit, you know. And I can't even describe how I can tell that. There's just like a eunice to the music that I can hear. So yeah, like what was that process for you, like from a production creative process standpoint of like going from that I want to sound like this or have this kind of vibe to just like really honing in on what your style is and being able to stand behind it?
That was that was a lot of years of just like frustration and like trying to be a certain sound, trying to find my own kind of distinct sonic spectrum, whatever that was, and like just never finding it. So I think if I was like sum up all those years, it was just like a process of just slowly, ever so slowly letting go and just like saying whatever, just make whatever you're gonna make. And it's interesting because, you know, there's this kind of paradox I've always noticed when somebody says, "Oh, he sounds like X," or "He sounds like this," or "He's," "Oh, he's just copying that person."
Mm.
The truth is that we're all just like sort of puzzles of like everybody that we've met in our life, and we're sort of made up of like all of our brothers or sisters or moms or dads, and we're just kind of like these beings of all the things we've experienced in our life. So I always find it funny because if you sound sort of like someone else, that is very much your sound. I mean, that is absolutely your sound. I mean, there's no doubt about it. There's a reason you gravitated towards that. I mean, if you paint a painting and it looks kind of like another artist
Right.
and you're inspired by that artist, that means that you're that artist. Like that is certainly a big conversation in the art community. But but I think that it's kind of impossible to just be something from nothing. You have to be something from something. So we're just sort of all these kind of conglomerate of everything that we've come up with in the past, everything that we've been inspired by.
Totally.
So yeah.
Yeah, man. I definitely like, I couldn't agree with more with that. And I think like the desire to, yeah, I always find it really interesting. Like, you know, that happens all the time in the music industry. Like a song will come out and then like some artist will be like, he ripped my song or whatever. And like sometimes I do think there is a fine line. Like there are times where it's like someone is clearly ripping off a song, or and they're like using the same like cymatic sample pack or whatever. It's just like the exact same song. And I think it's pretty obvious. You can tell when somebody hasn't gone through that process that you're describing of genuinely, earnestly trying to figure out what their sound is, while also in it, like unavoidably being inspired by things. Because like you said, as humans, like we're just these, we're not even like static identities. Like we're just like a process of things that's happening and changing constantly. And I think like the offense that someone might take, like, oh, someone's copying my sound, it's a very sort of like egoic, self-protective mechanism in many ways, where you're like, oh, damn, like that's like my thing. And I think that attitude, it gets you back into a mindset of what can I get from this, rather than like what am I providing and what am I giving. And I've struggled with this for sure. Like I use like an Indian flute in a lot of my songs, and like there is like a little there's a little period there where like Ape Drums, who's like, thanks man, Ape Drums is like one of my favorite artists. Like he had a couple of remixes come out where he was using a flute, and like somebody sent me the song and was like, dude, like, man, like your sound, it's catching on. And I'll be honest, dude, like my first reaction was like, man, like fuck this, like what the fuck, like why? He's like, this is my sound, like why am I not like, you know, like whatever. But then like I had to really catch myself and realize like how many things from him have inspired me, like the dembo rhythms and the drums and like all the stuff that I've taken, and none of it actually belongs to anyone. You know, like there's that Keith Richards quote where he talks about like all the greatest songs in history are just floating around above our heads. And the best artists are the ones who can clear their channel enough, can open their channel enough to just grab one out and just like put it out through them. And I think that's something you see like in the best artists on earth, whatever medium. There's a common thing I see is there's like this humility to them where they're like, it's not me. Like I'm just like the vessel for this to come through. And yeah, it's a really like fascinating thing to deal with that sense of ego, because I think like, and I don't know if you can relate, like I think there is a level of narcissism that goes into like wanting to be an artist, right? Like it's like you want to be the guy who's like up there. And it's like I one of my friends asked me this question the other day. He was like, imagine you could write the most impactful album of all time. Like we're talking like Michael Jackson Thriller, like, you know, hundreds of millions of sales. And it's just like affecting all these people's lives in all these beautiful ways, but no one would ever know it's you. Would you do it? And like that fucking question had me so shook. I was like, dude, that would suck. Like I wouldn't get any credit for that. So yeah, I think it's really interesting, just like keeping that ego in check and just realizing that that's like a part of it too.
Right, right. Yeah, I was just having that talk about narcissism in artists, like on the 4th of July. It's yeah, it's interesting when you could come across an artist that you can genuinely feel a sense of like they're grounded, and they can they can allow that sort of like channeling, and you know they're not necessarily looking for credit. Or is it that they're just such a big artist that they have so much credit that they're just kind of over it,
Hmm.
you know, and they're just kind of like, okay, you know, I've gotten so much credit, I'm done getting credit. um, but also, you know, I got to still tour, so I'll write another album. So it's interesting because like David Bowie never wanted anything more than fame, and then he finally got all the fame in the world, and he hated it. It was just like this like immediate like what have I done? Because it's almost like fame's an interesting one. Once you get it, it's really hard to shake it off. Like you can't. Like once you are noticed worldwide, if you have a hit song, that's extremely hard to shake that off. It takes years. Think about how many actors haven't made a film in like 20 years and they're still bothered, while they're eating dinner.
Right.
And it's just 20 years
And it's
of
for like that one movie that they're probably like so sick of hearing about. Like,
right and now they're stuck in a box of just
right.
like, oh yeah, you're that one guy who like threw the cake in that film that was so funny, and you're just like, yeah, it's just like at that point you're just like probably you probably have to see a therapist or find some sort of like personal tools to like cope with that. And I've met a lot of I met Jerry Seinfeld, worked on one of his shows when I was younger, and he had a really interesting take on fame, which was he loved it. And it was really interesting to hear because he wakes up in the morning and he's just like, yeah, I'm fucking Jerry Seinfeld. I love this. And the question came up when somebody on set was like, oh yeah, being, famous must be hard. And he was like, absolutely not. Like everybody loves me. And so where does that perspective come from? Is it just because you decide that you like it? Um, or are you going to be that rock star that, oh, everybody's like constantly paying attention to me, I hate it? It's like, were you like that from the beginning? Was it kind of an act you were putting on that you became over time? you know
Right.
so it's interesting. I truly believe that you can change your perspective on the situation.
Mm. Yeah, that's the Seinfeld thing is interesting because I wonder, yeah, I mean, I just wonder how genuine, like, I guess he's being in that way, or if that's just like him being funny. Like, because I hear the other story much more often, which is like the David Bowie version, where
Right.
somebody get like, or there's that Jim Carrey quote where he's like, I wish that everybody could become rich and famous so that they would realize that it's not what they're actually looking for. And this is coming from, one of the most famous actors ever. And
Right. Right.
yeah, I think that desire, like fame is so interesting because it's literally based on other people's opinions. Like it's like you hear like that's like a common self-help advice thing where it's like you shouldn't care what other people think about you. Some people are going to love you, some people are going to hate you. You just got to be true to yourself and like garner your sense of self-worth and self-satisfaction from whether or not you're sticking to your values and in integrity with yourself. This is like I would say that's like pretty good advice, like, common self-help advice. But then like fame by definition is literally based on the opinions of others. Like if there were no other people on earth, fame wouldn't be a thing. It just like wouldn't even be like it wouldn't even make sense as a concept. So I feel like people who are actually pursuing fame for its own sake, for the purpose of being famous, to me it feels like the ultimate self-abandonment actually. Because it's what you're saying to yourself is like, I won't be happy until all these other people's opinions of me are favorable. And I wonder if that's why, like, the David Bowies and Jim Carreys of the world find that disillusionment. And, maybe the only thing that kept them sane is the fact that they got famous doing something that they loved. Whereas, maybe Jerry Seinfeld too, like it's that maybe he wasn't looking for the fame and now he's just enjoying it. But I wonder if he would enjoy it as much if he was just, you know, like a reality show star and he wasn't famous for something that he loves.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's very difficult. I think Jerry Seinfeld liked what he did, and
Right.
I think that's something that sort of allows him to be so happy and at peace with it, I should say. But on the other end, you got, well, I won't name his name, but we're at, I mean, extremely famous guy, and we're having sushi and at a downtown restaurant, and we leave the restaurant, and then there's a whole pack of people outside waiting to take photos of him because one of us posted on Instagram. Like, but didn't even tag him in it, nothing. It's just like there's people that stalk the Instagram, like find out that maybe we hang out with him, and then eventually you just do a quick story. They like tie it together, that they like triangulate, like, oh,
Jesus.
he's probably there, and then everybody shows up and takes photos, like stuff like that. Like that's the next level type of fame. And walking out of the restaurant to see that, it was really interesting to see the way he reacted, because he was just so used to it. And
Mm,
he took photos with everybody, said hello. His wife knew how to pull him away.
mm.
And but I don't think he likes it as much as Jerry Seinfeld. He's kind of like, yeah, this has been going on for like 30 years. I'm just like, you know, kind of over it at
Right,
this point.
right, right.
So it's, yeah, it's like that type of fame, and I think both of them have a very similar level of fame.
Mm,
It's just like, at what point, uh, do you decide that the way that you perceive that, which it seems that both of them perceive it a little differently. Jerry Seinfeld loves it, loves when people talk to him. This guy is just kind of like, yeah, I just want to be a normal person and just freaking hang out with my wife.
right. Yeah, man. And yeah, I think like it kind of comes back to what we were talking about earlier about the motivation behind why you do things and why you take action. Like when we were talking about all the different things that you do, like, you're producing music, but then you're also leveraging your film background and skills to create these like episodes for Instagram, and then you're making skateboards. Like, to me, it just looks like you're just doing shit that is fun for you. Like, and that's like the extent. It's like, and then just trusting that by doing things that excite you, like, the world will reciprocate financially in all other kinds of ways. And that's actually that's not really your responsibility to worry about that. It's just to do the things that are fun for you. And I want to take it back now to the Jenga bus, which I don't even know if that, like, if you're still doing that on occasion, but like uh, back in the day, yeah, maybe if you want, it's probably better if you just talk about it, like introduce what that was. Cause to me, that was like another example. I remember like being around when you were like building that, and I didn't even really understand like what it was or like what the point of it was, but I kind of got the sense like you were just like, I want to fucking play at festivals and like drive around the country, and like kind of like what you were saying earlier, like why would I wait? Like I'm just going to take matters into my own hands and do this. And that's something that I've always really admired about you, man. Like I feel like are just you're just like an action taker. You're like, I want to do this, I'm going to do it. So yeah, do you want to talk a little bit about what the Jenga bus was, like how it developed, and then yeah, what the state of it is now?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think the Jenga bus is like whether you take from it or not as like a concept, I think at least most artists should think about this sort of approach to art. It doesn't mean it's the right one. It worked for me, but the bus was pretty much like, if I was to boil down music to what it was I really wanted to do, it was to go out and tour. Like that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to do that since like I was, you know, 15 years old. I think I made the decision. Like I was like, I'm gonna tour the world. I'm just gonna do this. Like I'm gonna, and back then it was, I wanted to be in a band and I wanted to be a guitarist.
Hmm.
And but as the music genres changed, and maybe as I, became more into electronic music, the dream never changed. It was just like, I'm gonna tour. And I was waiting for a record label to make that happen. I was waiting for a manager to make that happen. I was waiting for, like, I'm going to put out the right song and everybody's going to love it and then it's going to happen. And I
Yeah.
realized, like, I was like 24 and it didn't happen yet. And I wouldn't say it was like scary, but it was kind of like a feeling of like, how am I going to make this happen? Because it hasn't happened yet. And Jim Morrison died when he was 27, and all these other amazing artists died when they were 27. So I was always just kind of on this like sand timer. I was just like, man, well, maybe what if I die at 27? Did I do anything?
Hmm.
And so I was at my girlfriend Catherine's house, and we were watching this documentary on the Grateful Dead, And it was this really fascinating documentary. Like it blew my mind because I didn't know much about the Grateful Dead. I saw their story just kind of unfold in the most random way. They just were a bunch of kids in, some random town in the United States. And it just happened to be that Ken Kesey drives through with a school bus and throws a party, and they were doing the acid tests at that point. So like he was going around with Kool-Aid, and they were putting like a little bit of acid in it. And, that was like the whole flower power movement. And the Grateful Dead, of course, took some acid, and they were like, wow, this is amazing. And your parties are great, but you're missing music. Can we just come on your bus and travel with you? And he's like, sure, come on. And they just traveled the States. And what they did was they played music everywhere they went as Ken Kesey was throwing his parties. So whether they knew it or not, that was their first tour ever as the Grateful Dead. Like, and then, fast forward, now they're selling out Madison Square Garden. They're selling out huge stadiums multiple nights in a row. And they were having a blast when they started doing it. And I'll assume they were having a blast as they continued to do it. And, as members, finish their lives here on Earth, like, cause the band isn't, totally together anymore.
Right.
But it was such an interesting perspective because like they didn't wait for anybody. So I woke up the next morning and I was just like, that's it. I had $4,000 in my bank account. I decided I'm just going to buy a school bus and I'm going to convert it. I knew it was going to cost like at least 10,000, but I just couldn't wait. So I Googled the school bus that I wanted, and I found one over the Tappan Zee Bridge. I called the guy. He wanted 3,200. I talked him down 2,700. Went there. I didn't have a license to drive it. So I got my uncle to come through. He drove it, and I didn't have a place to park it. I called my friend Dylan. I was like, "Can I just park this in your parking lot behind your building?" And he's like, "I guess, yeah." And then just went to Home Depot, bought a bunch of stuff, watched YouTube videos, and in my mind, I just kept saying, if you build it, they will come. If you build it, they will come. And the whole time I'm just like, holy crap. I hope this friggin' thing works. And yeah, and you were on the first show we did, I pretty That's sure, right. Which was oh wait, that must have been like the second or third. I remember because the first one was like super haggard. Right. But we did Dance Festopia.
Right. Oh my God. That was such a ridiculous weekend, dude.
I mean, dude, I remember that was a fascinating weekend because that was the first time that there were like thousands of people in front of the bus, which was crazy. Right. I think it was like it must have been the second show that Bus has ever done. And I remember before you went up, you were sitting there. I've never seen anybody do this before. In the most chaotic environment, and people drinking, doing drugs, yelling, it's a huge freaking party. We're underneath a bridge in Kansas City, and you're about to play, and in the midst of all this chaos, you were sitting there in total peace and serenity with your eyes closed, meditating. And I was walking by and I saw you and I was like, whoa, this is something else. that was really, I mean, I will never forget that. I've never seen another artist do that. That was wild. I don't even know how you did it. It was just it was such a stimulating environment, and you're just like, nope, gonna turn it off, everything off.
Yeah, man. I mean, I'm just, yeah, it's just like a sensitivity, I guess, like just to all this stimulation. And I think at the time, I don't think I was not drinking or smoking. Like I have been through phases where I want to talk about that too, because I know that we talked about this last time and you made some changes after our last conversation. But at the time, I don't think I was like strictly staying away from drinking. But since I started meditating, it was around that time, I've really become a lot more sensitive to how environments affect me as step one. And then as step two, how I respond to being affected in those ways. And the typical way that and I think a lot of people respond to being in an environment like that is to reach for a drink, or to reach for a joint, or to just reach for something to just level out the insane amount of stimulation that is coming towards your nervous system at an environment like that. You know, whether you're in a nightclub or at a festival, or especially if you're about to go on stage and be in front of a bunch of people. And since I started meditating, I really started getting much more curious about what are the actual mechanics of that whole process? Like, how does that work? Where, okay, I feel anxious, and then faster than the speed of thought, before I can even recognize it, so there's a beer in my hand and I'm drinking it, or I'm smoking weed or something. And really starting to slow down that whole process and see, like, is there a way that I can work with this anxiety and energy, in a way where I'm more aware and I'm more connected to what's actually happening on, rather than needing to disconnect. So, so yeah, that's kind of why. I mean, I've that's always been a thing for me before shows or anything, even like before this conversation, just like taking 5 minutes or whatever to level myself and center myself so I can just be here. Because my natural state is just to be like floating off in the clouds. Like, I'm just like always, my mind is just all over the place, you know. So which I don't think is unique to me by any means. But yeah, man, that was a crazy experience. And it's, I'm actually I do want to come back to the drinking thing and all that. But while we're on the subject of the bus, so I think that's such a great thing for artists that are listening to this to hear, or anybody actually who has a dream or has something that they're trying to do and is kind of like waiting for someone to give them permission, or for a gatekeeper to come and open the door or whatever. Because I think that's a message we get reinforced a lot, is like, you need this person, or you need this person, or whatever. And what's interesting about your story is you really took matters into your own hands. But then, and correct me if I'm wrong, it feels like certain gatekeepers did actually come and found you. Let's talk about Zed's Dead and Deadbeats, and like how that whole relationship was formed, because I think the bus was, you know, a big part of that, right? Like them seeing that, and yeah, just talk a little bit about that whole process of like how that relationship was formed.
Yeah, that was definitely mind blowing. At that point in my life, that was huge because I resigned to being the guy with the bus. Like I was that dude, and I was going to do that till the day I died. Like that was like die hard. I'm the hippie in the parking lot playing music till 7 in the morning in my school bus, and I just thought that was so great because I was able to like have conversations with people, and I felt like we were doing something and we were grassroots, and you know we're having barbecues, and you know just everything I loved about life. I was able to do it. It was music, it was food, it was great conversation, and I yeah. So fast forward, you know, a few years, interesting things started happening in those journeys, which was I would pirate illegally festivals. I would go in as an RV undercover, and then once the festival shut down, I would turn the bus on,
Right.
and it was like a smoke signal to the whole festival. Like I'd turn the music on loud enough that everybody would just hear it, and everybody doesn't want to go to sleep. It's 2 in the morning still. So everybody's thinking, where is that coming from? And before you know it, it's just like flocks of kids are coming to the bus. And you know, you went from DJing with some homies to like now there's like 2,000 kids in front of the thing.
Right.
And it was like it was always an interesting energy shift because you're just kind of messing around, you're not thinking too much about it, and you're like, oh, check out this song, check out that song. You're messing up DJing, it doesn't matter because there's two kids.
Right.
And then as the night goes on, it's like now 3 in the morning. You're you're no longer kind of just like messing around. You're looking out and there's like a lot of kids. Now it's like a sea of kids. And now that everything's changing, it's like, okay, your set time's gonna be in an hour, and then I'll go on after that. And like, you know, everybody's thinking like, dang, did I practice enough? You know, it's
Right.
just like
Right.
this crazy energy change where you went from just messing around to like it's a real show now.
Right.
And eventually at Camp Bisco, Live Nation was interested in adopting the bus into their festival, and that happened with a few other festivals. It became like a legit thing, and then we were curating actual lineups, and now headliners are coming to play it. And I was always blown away to be able to play with these people, to have the opportunity to play with other people. um, but I had never put out like a solid body of work.
Mm.
So I had built this platform, and I remember thinking I built this platform, and it's great exposure, and my logo's on the side of the bus, and everybody knows me as the underground bass dude. And I had like nothing to show for it except for being the dude in the parking lot that just like hosts all the parties. So at a certain point, I thought, wait, am I just like a host? Am I just like a stage hand, almost like a
Mm.
guy that just kind of brings the party to town? And I decided to write an album and put it out. And at that point in my life, it was interesting because there was a lot of stuff going on in my personal life with I guess this is going to tie into like our future conversation, but with alcoholism, dealing with my father's alcoholism, and that made the family life extremely difficult because everything was basically falling apart.
Mm.
And it kind of kept me on the road. I was just like, I just want to be out there. I don't want to be home. I don't want to be dealing with this. And I put like all of that into this album because it was the only thing that made me feel better. I would sit there and just make a bass, like a bass sound, and I would just hold the key and just listen to that bass sound. Like I didn't even make a song. I would just hold that key and just listen to it because it just like washed out everything from my brain. I was just like listening to this respace, and it just felt so nice. And I would and at that time I was watching this documentary called the Talambi Tribe, and it was about this tribe that was the most alienated tribe on the planet, and they lived in New Guinea, off of the coast of New Zealand, and they were approached by two American people that were able to document their experiences with them. Somehow they weren't murdered, but I was obsessed with this documentary, and thinking back on it, it kind of makes sense because all I wanted to do was just be isolated. Like I didn't want to be home. I didn't want to be anywhere. I just needed to just be out there. I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain. So I just kind of combined the two, like this, like these like sounds that I was making, and then the documentary, and I just put it into 9 songs, and I just put it out. I just set a date. I just said I'm just going to drop it here. I held myself accountable to that because I knew I would never release it if I didn't put a date on it. So, and then I upped the stakes even further by announcing that I was going to do an album release party. So now I have like a lot of people holding me accountable, and I say the place that I'm going to do it, which is the Bowery Electric in New York. And so the pressure was on because if I didn't do that, I never would have released the album. There's no doubt. So the time came. It was 2 days before. I was in my school bus. I was sweating because I was just like, I have to finish this thing. I was like, I felt like I was losing my mind because I was like, what have I done? This is like the stupidest decision. I should never have done this. Should have just stuck to throwing parties.
Right.
And we're talking about like 100 people. It wasn't even a lot of people that were coming to this thing, or at least I didn't even know. I thought 5 people were going to come. And finally put it out. I held this party. It ended up getting switched to the Knitting Factory, and it was pretty weird. It was a great party, and people came out, and there was some kids from the bus parties and stuff like that, and that was kind of it. I didn't hear much after that, but a few weeks later, in comes an email from Bass Nectar's agent who was interested, and they were kind of poking around like, hey, what's going on over there?
Right.
And then I got an email from Destructo, who's a pretty prominent name, and all these guys are prominent names. And then
Yep.
through my manager at the time, he threw it to Deadbeats, which is Dead's record label, and they just said they were interested. They were just like, we want to release this.
Mm.
And I just, yeah, I honestly didn't believe it was like true until they actually released it. I didn't tell anybody. Like, I was like, sure, let's do it. Like, it sounds great. And they were like, cool, get us the artwork, get us the music. And I was like, sweet. I sent it to them, didn't say a word. I was just like, bullshit. They're
Right.
not releasing that.
Not
There's
gonna
no,
jinx this. Yeah.
yeah, there's just no
Right.
way. I was like
Right.
waiting for the email, like, hey, you know what? We re-listened to it. And we don't like it too much. We just realized it never happened. And then eventually their Instagram just became flooded with my teasers for all my songs. And they were just like, they're like, this is coming soon. And they were just like, teaser this day, teaser this day, teaser this day. They did like 4 teasers for all of them. Then the announce came out. I was like, holy crap, they put me on so hard.
Yeah.
And it was crazy. And then magically, and this is definitely for any artist listening, one thing that I really noticed was I showed that album to a lot of people before I released it. And
Mm.
then of course when I released it. And the consensus was always, dude, good work. That was good. You know, it was kind of like, yeah, congrats.
Right.
When it came out on Deadbeats, it was like, holy crap, dude! Like,
Wow.
this is
Yeah.
the best thing I've ever heard in my life. Like, you're gonna change the game. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, it was almost because that branding, because that recognition and that, like,
Right.
culture of Deadbeats, which is like they've curated that really well, um, decided to put their credit and put their reputation on the line to represent me. First, I was extremely grateful for and still am. But I feel that levity, that's what brings people to that like conclusion of, you're amazing.
Right.
So in that way, labels can be, really beneficial to sort of give people a new perspective on an artist.
Yeah, and I think, dude, that's such that's hilarious, by the way, and like so good for artists to hear because like once you understand that that's like a thing that's a dynamic at play, is that people's perceptions are so influenced by the people who they perceive to have good taste, right? The
Mm.
tastemakers. And once you understand that, the power of uh, like the tribe, basically, like the power of groupthink and how people are influenced into thinking that something's good or great or changing the game or whatever, like you can leverage for any artist, like whether or not you get signed by a label or not, like you can leverage that by just training yourself to believe in your project to that degree, right? So that you eventually, like your own belief like is going to rub off on people. And I think that's something that it's really like an internal process that I'm still definitely working through, like the ability to really like sit with a body of work that you've created or a project or whatever, and just like truly know deep in your soul, like this is dope. Doesn't mean that it's like better than anyone else or like that I'm like gonna, you don't have, doesn't have to become an egotistical thing, but just like to really understand like the work that you put in and to know that this is an authentic expression, and to really believe that it's dope and be able to walk into any room and maintain that belief regardless of what anybody says, because ultimately your story perfectly illustrates how people's perceptions are so malleable, right? But yet we take them so seriously because we're sensitive people as artists. So yeah, man, I mean that's a really really funny story, and like I think it's so interesting how that works, and even probably even in your perception of like going from that journey of not even believing them when they said that they're into it, to then like, oh damn, like this shit's actually coming out, it's on their Instagram, and then now it's out, and suddenly like I'm signed to Deadbeats and now I'm playing Red Rocks with Zed's Dead, and like just that whole progression. So
Unreal. Yeah.
yeah, man.
It's unreal. It really is. I mean, even this past weekend, um, kind of perception again. I made a song that I thought was one of my worst songs, and I'm sure you deal with this all the time. It's like it's just an artist thing. And sure enough, Deadbeats picked it up, and then this weekend, Zed's Dead is playing it in their set because they thought it was so good that they decided to play it
Wow.
to a sold out Red Rocks crowd. And the entire time I was so reluctant to even hit the send button when I sent the email to them, because with
Wow.
the song, I was just like, they're gonna just not release. There's no way they're gonna release this. They're gonna just tell me to go fuck myself. And I sent it, and they were like, yeah, it's great. And I was like, okay, yeah, sweet. Maybe they just have like a loose schedule right now. Maybe they just need
Right.
something. So they were like, yeah, I guess this works.
Right.
As an artist, it's just important to, like, if people tell you it's good, it's okay to believe them.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And it's also okay to, like, believe in yourself, even if you have to almost like kind of like force that, like almost like if you're not feeling good, the science of smiling kind of makes you feel a little better, which is always a really weird thing. But just giving yourself a break, like, give yourself a break. Maybe you've been making music long enough that maybe it is pretty good. Think about when you first started.
Right.
Did you make stuff that was sounding like, the thing you're making right now? Probably not. Maybe
Right.
meditate on that. Think about how far the journey has been, and don't compare yourself to the next level up, but think about, the few steps behind you and
Right.
where you've come. And, perhaps giving yourself a break will allow that sort of flow of energy into feeling confident in every move.
Right.
Just feeling a bit more like, I'm going to make something because I feel confident. I'm not going to second guess everything.
Yep. Yeah, man. And that's such a process. Like, I know for myself, I can definitely say, like, I have no problem with doubting myself. That is like one thing I definitely did not struggle with. Like, I do that enough. And it's kind of like this quote, like, that I love that says, people who worry don't need to worry. So, like, if you're the type of person that already is constantly comparing yourself to, like, oh, is my kick cutting through the way that this song is, or whatever it is, like, if you're already that type of person that's wired that way, you probably you're the kind of person that deserves to give yourself that break, because you can be sure that, like, that part of you is going to do its job. Like, the part of you that needs to doubt everything and critique everything, it's doing its job all the time, so you can give it a day off to just really start to trust yourself. And I feel like, one of the things, and I don't know if you have noticed this in your own evolution as an artist and as a producer, and I know we're talking specifically about production right now, but I think, again, this is applicable to lots of different fields and mediums. When I was, like, first starting out producing, and not even that long ago, honestly, I used to just be so perplexed as to how these professional artists that were had this busy tour schedule, right? And they're just consistently putting out, like, fire. And I'm like, bro, it takes me like 6 months to feel like somewhat confident in, like, a mediocre mix down. Like, how are these people making these full albums that just sound amazing? And what I've realized is two things. One, it's not just them. Like, it's like usually like a fucking team of people. And that's like one piece of it. But then the other thing is, like, just by that, what you were talking about earlier, that process of trial and error and frustration, and just the days where you are in the studio, like, replacing your kick 8 times, and then finally you realize, like, the original kick was the best one and you should have just stuck with that. Like, whatever the process is, like, it's through all of that that I think you start to develop that trust in yourself to just quickly be like, whatever the first thing that came to my mind was, is probably, like, that was that moment of inspiration and excitement, and I should go with that instead of second guessing it. And it's not to say that, like, that's always the perfect thing, but I think, like, that ability to really trust yourself, I think all the great artists have that. Even like vocalists and stuff, like, you hear about rappers who just, like, get in the booth. Like, there's Jay-Z, I've heard stories about, like, where he just, like, gets in the booth and he just, because of the amount of practice and repetition, he has this level of confidence where he can just step in there and trust that, like, the first take is going to be fire, and, like, that's all they can just use that. So, and I think it's the same with producers. Like, just developing that trust in yourself is so important.
Right, right. Yeah. Malcolm Gladwell's, what is it, 10,000 hours? I think it's supposed to be.
Right.
The same thing. I
Yep.
mean, at a certain point, you just kind of become confident in yourself. And, maybe before we had fans, maybe it was easier to have confidence in a way because there was nobody to impress.
Right.
So it's almost like we have to go through this threshold of, like, now dealing with, like, people critiquing your music, and that's like the next challenge as an artist. And then once you're through that, that confidence, I believe, comes back. At least I'm finding it. I'm just kind of
Right.
like, well, whatever. I mean, if people don't like it, it's not the end of the world. There'll be
Right.
another release in like a few weeks or something.
Right.
But yeah,
And
it
like,
always seems like
yeah.
you're just reaching these new tiers of thresholds. Like what is it going to be next time? Now you have your confidence as an artist to make music. Now it might be your live performance.
Right.
Maybe now you're focusing more on production, and you're just like, man, like my lighting guy's got to be on point. I want par cans over here. I want the LED thing to be here. I want the screen to be there. And maybe you're not even thinking about the music at that point.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of like the hero's journey, like archetype of like, the young man or protagonist leaves home and like goes on this crazy adventure, but the last final destination is coming home to the place that he started, but just feeling much more comfortable in that place. And I think that's what it, and all the great artists that I look up to, musical or not, or just just the people who I think are like happiest and most fulfilled, they're having fun, man. Like they're just having a good time. Like they're following that childlike instinct of just like, yeah, man. Like I remember when I first started producing, like I didn't know what the fuck I was doing, but like I still have some of those songs, and like obviously I'm not going to release them because like the sound, the mixing or whatever is not great. But like I can hear just like the purity in it, like the intention in it. And I think coming back to that process, that place is when you can really start having fun as an artist, and it starts to feel less like a drag or a grind or like a hustle. Not to say that there aren't moments where it does feel like that, but it's just like you kind of return to like why you got into it in the first place. And I don't know if you're familiar with like Willie Joy. He has this podcast that he does, and he was interviewing Alex Young, who back in the day was like this like trap like prodigy, and then he kind of like pivoted and started making like way more like underground music. And he was talking about how like when he first started making music, he felt like he needed to be inspired, and like if he wasn't inspired, then like there was something wrong. And now like his only priority is to be having fun. Like it's just like, am I having a good time? And if not, then like I'm gonna go for a walk, or like I'm gonna go do something else. Like I'm not gonna sit here and force myself to come up with like the next great whatever it is that's in my head, because it's just that loose fun energy, I think, is from out of that place is where all the magic comes anyway.
Right. And that, I think that goes into our last phone call that we had, or one of our big last phone calls, which was, is it the chicken or the egg? Do you find inspiration through just like forcing yourself to sit down and drink a coffee and just like focus, or drink a beer or whatever, or how artists are all different.
Right.
Um, and um, comparing that to, is it your general lifestyle that you choose to live? Are you living the lifestyle that's going to allow the most bandwidth for energy flow?
Right.
Because I truly believe there are energy restrictors, which are like alcohol, for instance. Like, no doubt. I mean, it. I mean, how many things do you consume that make you feel like you're dying the next day? It's like not many things. Maybe poison. I don't
Right.
know. Like,
Right.
it's
Right.
like there's not many things. So I mean, talk about an energy restrictor. Um, or just taking time to talk to family, or like have a great conversation with a friend, or go on a walk. And I remember Skrillex saying that he just goes on a walk if he just feels like a bit overwhelmed or can't like find the right sound.
Mm.
And I was like, what? Like, no way. Like, I don't buy that. Like, I
Right.
was like, he definitely talks to like his like super world leading pioneer mixing engineer, and he gives him crazy advice, or like, like
Right. Right. Right.
it's not, you're always assuming he does like crazy stuff, like there
Right.
has to be, probably calls like, Lady Gaga and has a good conversation with her. He's just like, yeah, I just go on a walk. I'm like,
Right.
wait, that's
They're
it?
like,
I
how's
thought,
that? I could do that. That can't be what you do. I could do that. Like,
I know.
right.
It's like disappointing almost. And then
Right. Right.
you find, at least myself years later, yeah, I just want to walk now. I'm like, oh, this is great. It actually worked.
Right, right. Yeah,
Love
dude,
it.
let's if you don't mind, we'll wrap this up in a second, but maybe the last thing we can touch on is um yeah, like talk about the alcohol thing, because we did talk about that last time. I remember that in our conversation a year and a half ago when we chatted on the phone. And I remember you saying like you stopped drinking after that, or shortly after that conversation. What has that been like for you? Like, how have things changed? And yeah, would love to hear about that.
I was like, I mentioned before, I've witnessed a lot of alcoholism in my own family, and um, I've witnessed, over the years of just being in a school bus, going to music festivals, seeing, stuff that you, you typically just wish you wouldn't have to see, which is just a lot of like self destruction. And there's in my mind, there's definitely a clear line between having a good time and it becoming like, it's a diminishing return after a while. So, are you the type of person that can drink and, be fine and wake up and go to work, or are you the type of person that it never ends? But for me in my life, I was the type of person that I could drink and I could stop, and that wasn't an issue with me. But my dreams were so big that even being able to stop the weekends, if I'm drinking Friday, Saturday, maybe having a glass of wine on Sunday, that's like 1/3 of my life. And I just wasn't willing to compensate. Like, I wasn't gonna say, oh, you know what? Okay, I can waste 1/3 of my life. I could be drunk for 1/3 of my life. And it was a very personal thing. I didn't talk about it with anybody. It wasn't anything I even like to share with people. Until recently, I've been a bit more open about it.
Mm.
And actually, one of the only people I talked to was you. Um, and I called you, and I don't know. I think my father had just passed. I think I was talking to you in a stairwell, and I was so intrigued that you were able to not drink, and I just was curious. I wanted to ask questions, and there was a lot of I did have a lot of questions for you, which was like, how is your energy? Like, how is it going out and being social, and how has it impacted your life? And from that conversation, um, which was one of the most pivotal conversations I had, I just decided to give it at least a shot and just see how it impacted my life. And by all means, if my life was boring and I wasn't having a good time, or like I was wishing I could be out well, I still party, but like I wish I could be out there drinking and to have a good time, I would be doing it. But my life is just so much better. Just like exponentially better. It's like I have so much energy in the mornings, and like I can make it feels like 4 5 times more stuff than I was able to do before.
Mm.
And I feel I can connect with people better. I feel I can network better, easier, have genuine connections with people. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. I wouldn't.
It's beautiful, man. Yeah, I'm so happy to hear that, and I think it's really inspiring that you are choosing to open up and share your story for people, because I think it's something that um, can just help a lot of souls out there, because it is such a pervasive part of our culture. And, not to turn this into like a drinking is bad thing, or I don't think that's what we're trying to do, but we're just talking about what I take from your story is like a high degree of self-awareness and clarity about what integrity means to you, and just setting up your life in a way where you can live in accordance to that. And I think everybody sort of has to figure what that is for themselves. But yeah, man, I'm so happy that you found that and are continuing to find it. And yeah, dude, I'm just super proud of you. I love you. I'm so happy that you were able to make the time. And
Yeah, dude. I mean,
yeah,
thank you for having me. I mean, yeah, and love you too, brother. I mean, I feel like we've come a long way since throwing parties at Slake nightclub and
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
just hoping we make we recoup our money.
Right, right. Yeah, one of these days.
Holy cow. Yeah,
Oh
no.
my God. That was ridiculous. Yeah, man. Well, I'll let you get out of here. But I know I saw you recently, you posted you got an upcoming tour with Champagne Drip in August, I believe. So that looks like it's gonna be awesome. Yeah, anything you want to just let people know that's coming down the pipeline, or anything people should be on the lookout for?
Just a lot of new releases. And if you live in Denver, I'm going to be doing a very special thing in September. And I can't say much about it, but if you live in Denver, you're definitely going to find out. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So just keep your eyes peeled. We're gonna do something that's definitely a time to remember.
That's that's amazing. It was like so mysterious. I'm like, okay, I think you just got a bunch of new followers just from that. All right, dude. So last question I asked everybody on the show, which is just 3 people so far, is what makes you feel the most free?
It's a great question. If I had to be practical about that answer, and it might seem like an oxymoron, but having my life together and scheduled gives me the most freedom I've ever had in my life.
Mm.
And that allows me to be able to do whatever I want. And I know that things are going to be scheduled at a certain time on a certain day. So it frees up my mind completely. I don't have to think about those things until it comes into my life, which allows me to be in the present moment as much as possible
Mm.
while getting the most amount of stuff done in my life.
That's an incredible answer, man. Yeah, that's the paradox of discipline, right? Just actually creates more freedom.
Definitely is.
All right, brother. Well, dude, this is amazing. Thank you again. And yeah, I mean, we'll do a part 2 at some point soon, I'm sure.
Dude, Ashish, thank you so much, brother. I really appreciate you, dude.
Likewise, man.